Distinctive Italian design makes Alfa Romeo's Giulia stand out in the compact executive saloon segment, but this Latin contender has far more up its tailored sleeve than just good looks. Innovative engines, perfect weight distribution, unique technology and a best-in-class power-to-weight ratio deliver a car worthy of its famous maker. At last. This is the Alfa Romeo Giulia, probably the most important car to be launched in the history of this famous Milanese brand. You'll want to know why. Well, this premium compact executive sports saloon is the first completely new mainstream Alfa we've seen since the Giulietta in 2010. And it's the first rear-wheel drive contender the marque has sold since the 75 model went out of production back in 1992. That was the last car to be developed by Alfa Romeo before Fiat took control of the company, which is significant because all the products launched by the brand since have been front-driven and, to put it politely, very Fiat-orientated. To some extent, that explains the relative lack of success of the two sports saloons the firm has bought us since, the 156 of 1998 and the 159 of 2006. These stylish contenders had some, but unfortunately not all, of the basic elements really needed for a car of this kind. An ideally weighted rear-wheel drive chassis, superb handling, emotive looks and crisp, characterful, high-performance engines. Alfa itself knew this, having originally established these fundamentals in what could be seen as the very first car of this kind to be launched on the market, the original Type 105 Giulia model, which sold between 1962 and 1978. In reviving this famous badge, the brand also hopes to revive the unique appeal that once made its products so appealing and different. Certainly the prospects seem promising. The rear-driven Giorgio platform this model shares with Alfa's Stelvio SUV is all new. Plus, there's a raft of new engines, including, crucially, an all-aluminium four-cylinder diesel unit, the kind of power plant that the majority of business buyers in the sports saloon segment now want. Plus, to provide a few halo headlines for the lineup, there's also a 510 brake horsepower V6 bi-turbo quadrifoglio super saloon variant, the fastest Alfa ever made. Even more affordable Giulia variants like this one, though, seem to be able to offer something special, thanks to seductive styling that offers something really different in this sector. Can this car combine that with the kind of sensible formula needed to make it a really credible alternative to the BMW 3 Series, Mercedes C-Class and Audi A4 models that dominate this segment? Let's find out. If the look of this Alfa didn't make you want to buy it, the driving experience it offers might well do. Of course, the Giulia is saddled with quite a weight of expectation here, tasked with embodying all of this famous Italian brand's heritage and sporting prowess. That it can deliver on this is evident in the first few miles you spend at the wheel. The steering, for example, is quick and very responsive, weighting up nicely with speed and giving you complete confidence in placing the car precisely where you want it. You always know exactly what's happening between the rubber and the road. It's agile too, aided by the stiff, sophisticated new Giorgio platform, which delivers a low centre of gravity, a class-leading power-to-weight ratio, a perfect 50-50 front-to-rear weight balance, and structural rigidity that keeps body roll well in check. Unlike its 156 and 159 model predecessors, the Giulia is rear-driven, and like its rivals, can be all-wheel driven too, though sadly not in our market. Something else right-hand drive buyers are being denied is manual transmission, a directive we were initially slightly disappointed by. This is an Alfa after all. The reality, of course, is that hardly anyone would have bought a stick-shift Giulia had the importers decided to offer one, especially after trying what is apparently a clunky change mechanism controlled by a rather cheap-feeling lever. So all models get this, a slick, quick auto 8-speeder, which, if you specify your car right, will come complete with these huge, deliciously emotive Ferrari-derived paddle shifters that click satisfyingly through the ratios and can be pulled back simultaneously to select neutral when you cruise up to the traffic light start line, just as on a 488 GTB. Brilliant. If you're going to drive in Maranello mode, you're going to want to set this DNA drive selector down here by the gear stick into its most focused dynamic setting. The other options are natural and advanced efficiency. In our experience, the difference that these sorts of systems tend to make can often be difficult to discern. But set in dynamic, this one sharpens the throttle, the steering and the gear change timings by a useful amount. It'll alter the suspension feel too if you've got yourself a mainstream model fitted with the optional performance pack that we've been trying here. This gets you a limited slip differential to help get the power down through the bends, and Alfa active suspension that automatically adapts the damping to the surface conditions. Don't worry if you can't stretch to the active damping. The standard passive system is also very good, thanks to a sophisticated double wishbone front and multi-link rear suspended setup. That's provided you don't mind ride quality that's very much on the firm side of comfortable. Now you're going to want to know about engines. They are, and ought to be, at the heart of any Alfa Romeo. If you're a potential buyer, you'll be pleased to know that all of them have been freshly developed for this car. And if you're a fan of the brand, you'll be even happier to learn that none of them have been simply scooped from a cheaper Fiat model, as was the case in the previous 156 and 159 model lineups. What do they feel like? Well, fizzy is a word that's been used, and it's one you'll understand almost immediately you hit the road in one of these. The 200 horsepower 2-litre petrol turbo engine that we're trying here might be the entry-level unit, but it delivers almost everything you'd want to properly enjoy this Alfa in the way that an Alfa should be enjoyed. Unlike some of this Milanese brand's previous high-revving petrol motors that needed to be thrashed until the car shook for meaningful forward motion, this one develops a useful slug of pulling power, 330 Newton meters, from right down low in the rev range. Yet it's still charismatic enough to make you want to plant the throttle at every opportunity, accelerating the car with a real sense of occasion. Plus it's fast. 62 miles an hour from rest in 6.6 seconds is properly quick. None of this variant's direct German rivals can get near the 7-second barrier, and the top speed is usefully fleet at 146 miles an hour. These are stats that might make you doubt the wisdom of paying substantially more for the Veloce version, in which the same engine is tuned to 280 horsepower but goes only fractionally faster, the 0-62 miles an hour sprint time reduced to 5.7 seconds and the top speed raised to 149 miles an hour. All of which will be interesting but ultimately irrelevant to the 80% of Giulia customers who will want one of the 2.2-litre diesel variants. Back in 1976, the original Type 105 Giulia Nuova Super Diesel was one of the very first oil-fueled cars of this class ever made. Powered by a rattly old Alfa F12 van-derived 54 horsepower 1.8-litre unit, its production life was mercifully short-lived. Fortunately, things have come on a long way since then, and this modern era Giulia's all-aluminium 2.2-litre multijet 2 4-cylinder engine is reckoned to be a considerable improvement on the 2-litre multijet units that most buyers chose in this model's 159 predecessor. Is it? In terms of refinement, we're really not sure. Despite a balancer shaft supposed to smooth out the worst of the rumblings, it's still louder and rougher than we'd ideally want a modern diesel to be, especially when cold. As usual, things calm themselves quite a lot once you get up to cruising speed, though once at or near the national limit, the issue instead is the slightly higher than average levels of wind and road noise you'll find in all Giulia variants. It's not intrusive, but it is an area where Jaguar and the German brands retain a small but significant advantage. In other areas, though, there's very little that you could take issue with. Two versions of this 2.2 litre unit are on offer, developing either 150 or 180 horsepower, and both offer significantly more performance than you'd get from direct rivals. The performance stats don't really bear this out. The 150 horsepower model makes 62 miles an hour from rest in 8.2 seconds, en route to 137 miles an hour, while for the 180 horsepower version, the figures are 7.1 seconds and 143 miles an hour. You learn more from looking at the torque figure, rated at 450 Newton meters for both derivatives. That's around 40% more pulling power than you'd get in, say, a directly comparable 150 horsepower BMW 318D, a difference that really tells when you're accelerating through the gears. Finally, though it's not our focus here, we should also brief you on the charms of the top Quadrifoglio Super Saloon variant, a four-door Ferrari in all but name. Under the bonnet lies a 2.9 litre petrol V6 bi-turbo that's essentially a cut-down version of the 4 litre V8 used in Maranello's 488 GTB. It develops a thundering 510 horsepower, enough to humble even the uprated competition pack version of BMW's M3, and an output matched only by the upgraded and much pricier S version of this model's other most obvious rival, the Mercedes-AMG C63. The Giulia Quadrifoglio is fractionally quicker than both of these competitors, storming to 62 miles an hour in a 3.9 second time that's only slightly slower than that Ferrari I just mentioned. And should you find yourself a track or a stretch of unrestricted autobahn, it'll keep powering on up to 191 miles an hour. Alfa's thrown all the performance technology it has at this Halo model, though interestingly not its Q4 four-wheel drive system. In lieu of that, active torque vectoring helps get the power down through the bends, active suspension varies the damping, and Alfa chassis domain control connects the different systems to deliver the best setup as the car is being driven. There's also an Alfa active aero system that alters the angle of the front splitter to help this model scythe through the air more cleanly. Plus, the DNA drive mode system gets an extra race setting for tyre smoking starts. Here though, as we've said, our focus is on the mainstream models. If you're in search of a cosseting compact executive saloon, this probably isn't it. If, though, you want a car in this class in which you can take control, then we think you'll enjoy this Giulia model very much. You might quite justifiably feel pretty pleased with yourself when parking one of these amongst the Mercs, BMWs and Audis of your middle management colleagues. Even before you notice the evocative badge on the classic triangular trefoil nose, it's clear that this is a car with a uniquely Italian sense of flair, something further emphasised by the long bonnet, the short overhangs and the muscular haunches. There really is nothing quite like the Giulia in this segment. This unique heart-shaped front grille with its stylish cross and dragon badge is one of the most recognisable style elements in the automotive world and forms the starting point for two seductive creases that flow up into the sweeping bonnet. Concentrate on that rather than the unfortunate fact that, like so many contemporary Alfas, the front end of this one is somewhat disfigured by the necessity of having to fit a clumsy Great British number plate. Inevitably, this particular mainstream Giulia model misses out on the visual frills of the top Quadrifoglio Super Saloon variant, the one you tend to see in all the press pictures with its menacing front spoiler and aggressive bonnet vents. Nevertheless, even this variant is a striking looking thing with real overtaking presence, emphasised by these huge lower intakes with their black lattice grilles. The swept-back headlamps with their incorporated LED daytime running lights can be ordered with these optional bi-xenon beams, though not the full LED technology you'll find in rivals. There's a power-packed profile too. Indeed, it's from here that you best see the effect of the short overhangs and muscular rear haunches mentioned earlier. We also like the way that the roofline sweeps delicately into the tail section, and this confident central swage line that flows back through the door handles. This crease separating wheel arches housing rims between 16 and 18 inches in size. Choose the right ones. We've got 18-inch 10-spoke turbine-style rims here, embellished with evocative yellow calipers, and your car will really stand out. You might think the rear to be perhaps less immediately distinctive, but it's still very neatly styled, with the tail lights aiming to underline the low, wide stance of the car, and a boot lid that's finished with an integrated spoiler. This integrated lower diffuser style panel is another nice touch, but looks better when it incorporates dual exhausts. For some reason, at the foot of the range, you only get those on the diesel models. Of course, as usual, what's more important is the stuff you can't see, namely the Giorgio platform that's also used by the brand's Stelvio SUV and will additionally form the basis for another larger Alfa luxury model. It makes extensive use of lightweight materials, as indeed does the whole vehicle structure. The drive shaft's made of carbon fibre, the rear cross member features aluminium composite, and the doors, the wings, the engine and the suspension are all fashioned from pure aluminium. It's all very sophisticated and explains why this car is so much lighter than most of its segment rivals, tipping the scales, for example, at around 60 kilograms less than a rival Mercedes C-Class. Right, let's take a seat at the wheel. Now you'd hope for old-fashioned Alfa charisma with modern functionality and Teutonic quality, and this Giulia makes a good stab at achieving exactly that, though with a few caveats we'll come on to in a minute. For the moment though, let's just admire what's been achieved here. What a disappointment it would have been if all the romance of the exterior had been compromised by a cabin fashioned as a pale pastiche of what the German brands already offer. It hasn't been. Instead, we've been given a design that, in our view, defines what a sports saloon's cockpit should look like. Deeply cowled dials, a grippy little three-spoke wheel, splashes of aluminium, and huge evocative gear change paddles behind the steering wheel that look as if they were originally designed for a Ferrari, and probably were. They're optional at the foot of the range, but we think you simply have to have them. The starter button is positioned at 7 o'clock, just off the centre of the steering wheel, exactly as it would be in a 488 GTB V8, and the seats position and grip you with real purpose. If Maranello were ever to try and sell a car in this sector, this, you feel, is what it would be like. Situated high up in the middle of the dash is a large area of plain satin black that, once you fire the ignition, turns out to be a borderless multimedia screen that'll be 8.8 inches in size, provided you've avoided entry-level trim. There are the usual DAB radio, phone and navigational options, plus a useful split screen function, all accessible via this circular dial below the gear stick. But the TomTom-derived graphics used lack the classiness of rival German setups, and there's nothing like the depth of media connectivity that you'd now get in a rival Audi, BMW, Mercedes or Jaguar. If Alfa is going to be serious about this sector, it needs to catch up in this regard, and quickly. Anything this monitor can't tell you will probably be covered off by the colour TFT display provided between these evocative instrument dials. It'll be 7 inches in size, provided you've avoided entry-level trim. Trip computer, fuel meter and digital speedometer options are all available. To get them, you click on the end of this column stalk, at which point the caveats I alluded to earlier begin to become apparent. It isn't just that the stalk is, like much of the switchgear, quite cheaply fashioned and clearly borrowed from cheaper Fiat Group products. It also exhibits a lot of play in its positioning, a small but significant factor that every time you indicate or operate the wipers dilutes the ambience of quality that Alfa is presumably striving so hard to achieve with this car. There's so much else that's seductive about this cabin, though, that you quickly find yourself seeking excuses to forgive oversights of this kind. and annoyances like the lower quality plastics used further down the dash or the awkward over prominent positioning of this central USB port below the ventilation controls. Lovely little touches like the polished Alfa door sill plates, the BMW style auto gear lever and the rich lining used in the glove box help redeem things, but you won't get a complete feel for what's really possible here if you're buying in at the foot of the range and can't afford to dress the interior up a little with options. If you can add a bit of embellishment though, here, courtesy of the luxury Lusso pack with sumptuous silverwood trim, it can look absolutely gorgeous and Maserati-like. In fact, I drove a Ferrari GTC4 the other day and I'm really not sure if it was as nice as this inside. The supple Piano Fiore leather used extends with evocative orange stitching onto the dash, the door panels and the centre armrest. I'd really want it if I was buying this car. What else? Well, despite the bold, swooping style of the cabin, there's nothing really wrong with the ergonomics. The dials for the ventilation system and those below the gear stick for control of the audio and DNA driving mode system, for example, fall very nicely to hand. Stowage space manages to be acceptable too, though the door pockets are small and there's no overhead compartment for your sunglasses. The glove box is reasonably sized though. You get a compartment by the driver's right knee, twin cup holders concealed by this smart gliding panel at the base of the centre stack, and a central lidded box between the seats with USB, aux in and 12-volt ports. When it's time to take a seat in the rear, taller folk might find access hindered a little by this swept back roofline. Still, the rear door opens decently wide. Once inside, you'll find that there's a decent amount of backseat space by class standards, with plenty of room to push forward your feet beneath the front seats. In fact, we'd say that this Giulia offers more room back here than a rival Jaguar XE, despite the fact that this Italian contender is 29mm shorter in terms of total body length. That gives you an idea of how well packaged this Alfa has been. We reckon it matches the space standards of a competing BMW 3 Series, though that's not saying a great deal, and it does feel a little enclosed back here. You certainly wouldn't want to be stuck in the middle seat trying to position your legs around this huge central transmission tunnel. Still, as in the front, forget the sensibility and admire the charisma. These lovely silver-trimmed twin central eyeball vents, and on this optioned up model, these beautifully finished silverwood and leather-lined orange-stitched door cards. Practicalities include seatback nets and twin cup holders in this fold-down armrest. Finally, let's take a look in the boot, which opens to reveal a 480-litre capacity that, surely, not coincidentally, is the exact equal of a BMW 3 Series or a Mercedes C-Class. The area isn't quite as accessible as it is on those cars, nor is there any further space below the boot floor, despite the fact that the Italian brand declines to provide Giulia owners with any kind of spare wheel. You'll have to specify extra cost to run flat tyres if, in the event of a puncture, you want to avoid using this tyre repair kit. Rather meanly, Alfa makes you pay extra for cargo area tie-down points, and this split-folding rear backrest is extra too, though it does fold in a useful 40-20-40 split, so that long items like skis can be pushed through into the cabin without disturbing rear seat folk. So, a few things you need to know about the Giulia range. Prices start from around £30,000 for the 2-litre turbo petrol 200 horsepower version that we're trying here, but around 80% of buyers in this country will want the 2.2-litre diesel, which in 150 horsepower form costs from around £32,000, with a £1,200 premium getting you the pokier 180 horsepower version of this unit. Much rarer sights on our roads will be the two performance-orientated petrol derivatives. The Veloce model uses a pokier 280 horsepower version of the 2-litre turbo petrol unit. But properly frantic is the 510 horsepower V6 biturbo quadrifoglio super saloon variant, priced at around £61,000. Across the range, and a little unusually given that this is such a sporting saloon, there's no manual gearbox option for our market, just a paddle shift 8-speed auto. Apparently the cost of engineering the stick shift to work with right-hand drive wasn't considered worth the hassle. Given that the previous 156 and 159 models that Alfa has offered in this class have additionally been provided in estate form, you might also be a touch disappointed to learn that only this four-door saloon body shape is available. The Milanese marque thinks that this section of the segment will be sufficiently covered by its Stelvio SUV, which runs on the same platform and uses many of the same mechanicals. From launch, at least for our market anyway, there's no option for Giulia buyers of the brand's Q4 four-wheel drive system. Again, you'll need the Stelvio model for that. Alfa Romeo knows it has to price this car directly against its German rivals, so of course it has. If you're looking at spending from around £32,000 on a Giulia 2.2-litre diesel, then you'll find that it's been priced at about the level of a rival Jaguar XE in 163 PS 2-litre D auto form. Around £1,000 less would get you auto versions of comparable BMW 318D or Audi A4 2-litre TDI 150 PS models. And around £1,000 more would get you an equivalent Mercedes C220D. None of these cars can really offer the sheer charisma of this Alfa. Are there other options? Well, no, not really. You could choose an Infiniti Q50 2.2D at around £30,000, but its running costs are off the pace. Or be really different and spend much the same kind of money on a petrol-electric Lexus IS hybrid as an alternative to diesel. But that car's hobbled by a frustrating CVT auto gearbox that spoils its drive dynamics. Here, as mentioned, we're trying the 2-litre petrol turbo variant, which in 200 horsepower form has been equally closely matched to rivals. Its £30,000 asking figure pitches in about £3,000 above a Jaguar XE 2-litre I 200 PS auto, but it's much the same as you pay for automatic versions of equivalent rivals like the BMW 320i, the Audi A4 2-litre TFSI and the Mercedes C200. Again, the Alfa is a more interesting choice than any of these alternatives, but as with the diesel, you'll have to make a small sacrifice in terms of things like interior cabin quality if you're to choose it. Your call. As for other options, well, for around £4,000 more, you could have a comparable Infiniti Q50 2.2T, and for around £9,000 more, you could have a rival Lexus IS 200T. Neither are particularly appealing options, and both will cost you more to run. As for the performance petrol models, well, the 280 horsepower Giulia Veloce costs around the same as a comparably performing BMW 330i M Sport or an Audi A4 2-litre TFSI Quattro S-Line S-Tronic. You save around £2,000, but get a little less kit and go fractionally slower in a rival Jaguar XE 2-litre 240 PS Auto R-Sport model. As for the top 510 horsepower V6 Quadrifoglio variant, well, that's priced at around the same kind of money that will get you a BMW M3 in 450 horsepower competition package form, a Jaguar XE SVR or a Mercedes AMG C63 in standard 476 horsepower guise. Alfa Romeo will point out that an arguably more direct match is with the 510 horsepower C63S model, which costs around £70,000. Our focus here, though, is on more conventional Giulia variants, and if, having considered the alternatives, that's what you're drawn towards, then you're going to need to know just how generous Alfa Romeo has been with the standard spec. Well, let's see. The standard Giulia trim level, which has no other identifying tag and can only be had with petrol power, comes with all the main features you'll need. Things like 16-inch alloy wheels, front fog lamps, auto headlamps and wipers, an alarm and rear parking sensors. Inside there's dual zone climate control, cruise control, and the brand's DNA driving mode system that allows you to set the steering, throttle and gear change parameters to suit your personal preferences. Media features are taken care of by an Alfa Connect infotainment system that includes an 8-speaker DAB audio setup and works via a 6.5-inch centre dash display. Most Giulia buyers, though, are going to want to progress a little further up the range, probably to the super trim level that we're trying here, the starting point for diesel ownership and a badge referencing the name of one of the original Type 105 Giulia models of the 60s. At this level in the lineup, you get larger 17-inch alloy wheels and twin exhaust pipes on the diesel-powered versions. Aluminium sill covers greet you when you open the doors. A combination of leather and cloth covers the seats, and to further personalise things, you can specify a two-tone finish for the dash and side trims. On a more practical note, the driver information display on the dash is upgraded to 7 inches in size, while the infotainment setup gains a bigger 8.8-inch monitor and satellite navigation. If you want more, then the more dynamic-looking Speciale diesel variant and the Veloce 280 horsepower petrol model both beckon. Both feature sportier looks courtesy of 18-inch alloy wheels, bi-xenon headlights with LED daytime running lamps, black gloss window surrounds, sports bumpers, a sports diffuser and a chromed exhaust. Plus, there are coloured brake calipers, red on the Speciale and black on the Veloce. Inside with these variants, buyers can expect sport seats and a sports steering wheel, both trimmed in leather, plus aluminium trim for the pedals and parts of the cabin. Other features included at this level include power folding mirrors, electric front seats, an auto-dimming rearview mirror and a split folding rear backrest. The Veloce also gets front parking sensors, aluminium shift paddles and an upgraded braking system. Finally, we'll touch on the V6 bi-turbo Quadrifoglio variant, which, as you'd expect from its exalted price tag, comes with its own unique specification. That encompasses 19-inch alloy wheels, quad exhausts poking out of the rear diffuser and a sports bumper, incorporating an Alfa Active Aero system that alters the angle of the splitter to help the car scythe through the air more cleanly. Active torque vectoring helps get the power down through the bends. Active suspension varies the damping, and Alfa chassis domain control connects the different systems to deliver the best setup as the car is being driven. Inside, the upholstery features a lovely leather and Alcantara combination. Plus, there's carbon fibre dash trim, 2 individual rear seats and a red starter button on the steering wheel, along with a race mode that you can access through the DNA driving modes controller. On to options. On mainstream models, there are 3 extras you really need to pay extra for. The 40-20-40 split back bench, gear shift paddles on the steering wheel, and run flat tyres, without which you'll be stuck with Alfa's fix and go repair kit in the event of a puncture. You'll get the paddle shifters if you opt for the performance pack that's been fitted to this particular Giulia model, and also includes a limited slip differential and the Alfa Active suspension system. We recommend that, and if you have any further budget to spare, it'll make a big difference to the look and feel of the cabin if you can stretch to the optional Lusso pack, another extra that's been fitted here. This gives your Giulia lovely piano fiore leather upholstery, along with classy timber cabin trim in either walnut or, as here, in silverwood. With a Lusso pack, you also get chromed window surrounds, 8-way electric adjustment for the front chairs, a luxury heated steering wheel, power folding mirrors, and a 7-inch TFT instrument cluster display. Full leather upholstery can be ordered separately in black, tan or red, and you can have it extended onto the dash, the door panels and centre armrest. On lower spec models, you might want electric seat adjustment and sports seats too. What else? Well, you're certainly going to want to get the exterior look of your car right. There are 9 additional metallic colours you can pick from, in addition to the standard red, white and black solid shades, including the metallic Monte Carlo blue of this car. And of course, there's a wide range of alloy wheel designs in sizes from 16 to 18 inches, individual rim availability depending on the variant that you settled for. Staying on the outside of the car, you could order bi-xenon headlights, dark tinted rear glass, a panoramic sunroof, or gloss black trim for the door frames. Or perhaps you'd prefer brake calipers painted in red, black or yellow. Further perusal of the options list reveals the opportunity of selecting from a number of different extra cost packs. The Climate Pack incorporates a cooled glove box, an air quality system that filters out pollution, rear air vents, a cooling box and USB ports for front and rear passengers. There's also a cold weather pack that gives you heat for the front seats, the steering wheel and the windscreen washer nozzles. And a convenience pack that gives you keyless entry, door handle lights and an illuminated vanity mirror, along with extra storage for the driver. Earlier, we mentioned bi-xenon headlamps as an individual option. Well, they also come as part of a lighting pack, bundled in with headlamp washers and adaptive front lighting so that the beams can turn with the bends. Or you can have bi-xenons as part of a sport pack that also gives you a sport steering wheel plus aluminium covers for the centre tunnel, the door panels and the pedals. As for other things, well, a cargo net for the boot would be useful, and you'll need to pay extra for tie-down anchor points to go with it. We'd also suggest that anyone buying the entry-level model would do well to opt for the Alfa Connect 3D nav package that gives you the bigger 8.8-inch centre dash screen and the larger 7-inch instrument binnacle display. Plus, front and rear parking sensors would be good to have. The rear sensors combined with a rear view camera as part of an optional driver assistance pack. Finally, we'd want to look at upgrading the audio system, possibly with the Harman Kardon audio pack we've been trying here that comes with 11 speakers, a subwoofer and ambient cabin lighting. If funds permitted though, it'd be even better to look at the Sound Theatre by Harman Kardon option, with its 900 watt 12 channel 14 speaker setup. Enough on luxury extras, on to safety stuff. Every Giulia model comes with no less than 9 airbags, twin front and curtain bags, side bags for front and rear passengers, plus a driver's knee bag. Plus, of course, there are all the usual aids for traction and stability control, along, of course, with ABS, part of a clever IBS integrated braking system able to deliver a best-in-class braking distance from 62 miles an hour to a standstill of just 32 metres. Even more importantly, should all these features fail to prevent you from having an accident, you'll be protected by arguably the strongest body shell available in the segment, with rigidity improved by the use of advanced materials like carbon fibre, aluminium and aluminium composite. As a result, after crashing a Giulia in its testing programme, Euro NCAP awarded the Alfa Romeo a score of 98% for adult occupant protection, the highest score achieved by any car since the introduction of the organisation's more stringent rating system back in 2015. As is now common in this segment, this Alfa comes with an autonomous braking system, made up in this case of forward collision warning combined with autonomous emergency braking. As usual with these kinds of packages, this one uses radar sensors and a forward camera to scan the road ahead looking for potential accident hazards as you drive, in this case at speeds of up to 40 miles an hour. If something is detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or aren't able to, the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Lane departure warning is also included to alert you if you drift over highway lane markings. If you want to go further with camera-driven safety features, you'll need the Driver's Assistance Pack Plus option, along with a rear-view camera, all-round parking sensors and an anti-dazzle electrochromic coating for the wing mirrors and rear-view mirror. This gives you 3 further camera-driven safety features. Automatic high beam assist automatically dips your lights for you at night. A blind spot detection system works on the move to warn you if you're about to dangerously pull out to overtake when there's another vehicle in your blind spot. And rear cross path detection alerts you of oncoming traffic if you're reversing out of a parking space. As you'd expect, the top Quadrifoglio model gets all these systems as standard. Alfa, it seems, has got the message here. Lightweight engineering means heavyweight running cost savings. Hence, this Giulia's sophisticated new Giorgio platform and a high-tech body structure that, as we've said earlier in this film, incorporates copious use of carbon fibre, aluminium and aluminium composite. As a result, in its volume diesel form, this Giulia was launched as the lightest car in its segment, 25 kilograms lighter than a comparable Audi A4 and 60 kilograms lighter than a rival Mercedes C-Class. Add in the benefit of an all-new aluminium 2.2-litre diesel engine and you might justifiably expect a class-leading set of running costs. As it is, most obvious rivals can still do better, even when their diesel engines are saddled with the automatic gearbox that you have to have on a Giulia. Still, the important thing is that Alfa is there or thereabouts in terms of its efficiency showing, with both 150 and 180 horsepower versions of the 4-cylinder diesel motor managing identical returns, 67.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 109 grams per kilometre of CO2. Those who prefer to fuel their Giulia from the unleaded pump will probably be driving the 200 horsepower 2-litre turbo petrol model that I'm trying here, a derivative that offers combined cycle economy of 47.1 miles to the gallon and a CO2 output of 138 grams per kilometre. Should you want the more potent 280 horsepower version of this same unit fitted to the Veloce version, it comes with a consumption figure of 46.3 miles to the gallon and emits 141 grams per kilometre of CO2. As for the top 2.9-litre V6 biturbo quadrifoglio super saloon variant, well, no one would expect that to be a paragon of frugality, but thanks to a cylinder deactivation system that cuts in under part throttle loads, it actually doesn't do too badly. Its figures, 34.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 191 grams per kilometre of CO2, are roughly equal to what you get in a rival Mercedes AMG C63, and marginally better than can be managed in a less powerful BMW M3. A range of other factors play their part in helping the various Giulia models deliver on those numbers. This Alfa's efficient new 8-speed auto gearbox is a factor, of course, using its many ratios to continually propel the car in the most efficient way possible. In addition, of course, there's the usual automatic start and stop system to switch the engine off when you're in a standstill at traffic. Plus, of course, you'll need to do your part. The figures quoted assume selection of the Advanced Efficiency DNA driving system mode, which softens off the throttle response to give better fuel consumption. There's a graphic fuel consumption display in the instrument binnacle TFT readout, and there's an efficient drive eco-coaching setup on the centre dash infotainment screen that grades the frugality of your progress based on 3 criteria: acceleration, deceleration and gear changing. Okay, so what else do you need to know about the running costs of this Italian contender? Well, it comes with a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty that includes roadside assistance for the same length of time, should you be unlucky enough to break down. It's not likely that you will. Despite what some may assume about Alfa Romeo, customer surveys suggest that the brand's reliability record is no worse than that of its premium German rivals. Routine maintenance comes around every 9,000 miles for the petrol-powered models, while a diesel Giulia requires a dealer visit at 12,000 mile intervals. You can spread the cost of this work by opting for an easy care servicing plan that runs from 1 to 5 years. It includes the cost of all labour, parts and fluids, so you won't be landed with any unexpected bills. As for the all-important question of depreciation, well, rather surprisingly, the figures being predicted here are up there with the best in the class. According to independent experts CAP, residual values of up to 38.2% are possible over a typical 3-year and 60,000 mile period. The 180 horsepower 2.2-litre diesel Speciale model, for example, securing a 37% prediction over this period, bettering rival BMW 320d M Sport and Mercedes C220d AMG line rivals. As for the fast and furious Quadrifoglio, it keeps 38.2% of its list price after this time, which puts it on a level playing field with key competitors. The final cost consideration is insurance, another area where you might be surprised to find the Giulia performing very well against its rivals. The 2-litre turbo with its unleaded petrol motor sits in Group 24, while the 280 horsepower petrol version resides in Group 34. Choose the Quadrifoglio and your premium is calculated on a Group 46 ranking, which is lower than some of its closest contenders. Opt for the diesel models and the 150 horsepower 2.2 litre Alfa is in Group 22, while the 180 horsepower car slots into Group 26 with super trim or Group 27 in Speciale guise. The Giulia can't cure all of Alfa's problems, but it can set the brand back on the road to a more profitable future. There's every chance that it will. Indeed, if it can't, there's little hope for the various other Alfa models that in future will share its engineering. Is this the perfected finished article? The kind of car you'd get if you went for an A4, a C-Class or a 3 Series in this segment? Well, no. It's not quite as quiet or as well finished inside as those cars, issues that might drive some potential buyers back into the arms of those German brands with their understated air of superiority. Others might rightly conclude that they never expected an Alfa to be perfect and that this one gets closer to that mark than any other model in the company's history. These people might also tell you that the whole reason that they're considering a Giulia in the first place is precisely because they don't like the rather condescending, we know what's best for you perfection that's become such a mark of Teutonic engineering. If you share that view, we think you'll find this riveting, idiosyncratic and striking Italian contender to be a real breath of fresh air in a segment that's become, well, rather set in its ways. It won't be available in numbers large enough to really bother the volume players in the sector, but then that relative rarity is just another part of its appeal. What's important though is that selecting this Alfa as an alternative to those cars is a decision you could rationalise with head as well as heart. After all, the residual values are good, the efficiency figures are close to the class standard, and this car is as practical as any saloon in the segment. All of which leaves potential buyers free to enjoy the style, the drive dynamics and the hint of romance that comes with Giulia ownership. It's not only an Alfa you could love, it's also one you could justify, which is about as much as anyone could ask for.